Hi, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Mind Point, the podcast that talks about various topics in relation to mental health and wellness. My name's Justin. I'm the chairman of Love Yourself Canada. The topic that we're discussing today is supporting others. So, different ways that people can support other people who are going through their various mental health journeys. And then we've got our special guest today here. Wendy is joining us. Thank you so much, Wendy. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Wendy Pearson. I'm a registered psychotherapist and an EMDR certified psychotherapist as well. Been doing this for a long time, probably longer than you guys have been alive. And yeah, I love what I do. So I have my own practice downtown. It's called Evolve Psychotherapy and Group Consulting Incorporated. And we do a lot of work with mental illness, mental health. We're doing some promotional things, running some groups, trying to get out there as well, doing what you're doing to try and promote different ways of talking about mental health in a way that can really help people digest it and to understand that we all experience it at some point in our lives. Yeah. So thanks for having me.
Of course. Well, thank you so much for coming. The topic that we're discussing today is supporting others. So, different ways that people can support other people who are going through their various mental health journeys. For me, a good start, like I said, is I have an extremely well built support system. As someone who's been through my own mental health journey, it was very vital to my own growth and my own journey. And I think just having people maybe supporting you that, unconditionally, even if they don't maybe fully understand what you're going through, for me, is really, I think, one of the key tools you need. Kind of,
Sometimes just being there is enough. Being in
Sometimes.
here to listen to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And listening without judgment, right?
Mhm.
That aspect is really, really important. So nice. I'm glad you have that.
my parents are super great. My chosen family friends also very, very well versed in supporting me in different ways.
Yes.
And yeah, like I said, I'm very lucky, but I do understand that for some, it's not quite as easy and simple and straightforward.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, when you've found, like, when you think about either times where you've been anxious, I mean, we all have some emotions that pop up that make it hard for us to function and cope, and to be able to have somebody as your go-to, or somebody that maybe they don't understand how you're walking around managing this, but they have an understanding of, I just want to be there, like you're saying, that unconditional, that part of, I just want to hear you. That sense of showing up for somebody and being able to sit and be present with what they're going on, and you don't have to have the answers. That's the part that's really important, is a lot of people think that they need to know what they're supposed to say, or they're supposed to have the right answer, or they think that, whatever way they think they'd cope with it, they're trying to put that on the other person, and it doesn't go well.
Yeah, they might start jumping to solutions
Yeah.
when they're not really looking for a solution. They just want someone to listen to them and just tell them that what they're feeling is normal, valid, whatever it might be.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, there's almost kind of like a pre-conditioned structure to supporting as well.
Okay.
So for me specifically, I actually struggle with not going into solution mode because I really genuinely feel like that's what people need. Whereas learning more about being able to just listen made me realize that I was just conditioned to offer that solution and think like, let's solve this problem right away. But it's not always about like solving a problem,
That's
right?
right.
And I think that's a big, almost like myth about supporting other people.
Absolutely. And when I talk with clients, or even when I'm working with parents or loved ones of somebody who's experiencing, whether it's addiction or mental illness of some sort, it's about how you hold space for that person, because we see them in despair, we see them in distress. We want to jump in and be able to, like, X, Y, and Z, do these things, you'll feel better. But that's also about us tolerating our own kind of angst about, this person's presenting as upset in front of me. I feel like I have to do something. I feel like I need to make it better for them. When really most of the time people just want you to hold space and bear witness, right, to what they're going through, and to say, I hear you, and what can I do to help you, and let's do this together. And if they don't have the answer, that's okay too, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because I think like really is about being feeling like you've been heard.
Yeah, so important, right?
Yeah.
Definitely more of a collaborative experience that I have when I'm almost feel like I'm working with the person instead of dictating to the person what they should be doing, and finding the solutions together ends up being like a lot more efficient of a way to support people. But again, I also feel like there's a bit of a like we're it's almost like we're almost avoiding an uncomfortability as well, though.
Exactly.
Like we want to solve this problem now and get it done and over with so we don't need to be uncomfortable anymore,
Exactly.
but that's not necessarily the healthiest way of handling those types of situations.
Absolutely. And then you have like societal things, right? There's that toxic masculinity around, suck it up, be strong, you need to like, men don't cry. Like those things are still existing out there. And men more so than women, but I mean, there are lots of women out there as well that have grown up in families and the families are doing their best, but are that, let's fix it, right? There's a problem, let's fix it. We're not going to sit in it. Let's skip over the emotion part of it. And then that's where I see people in my office, right? Is that they've either grown up in a situation with their parents doing their best, and at the same time invalidating their emotions, or their parents don't have capacity to be able to hold their own emotions, so they invalidate the kid, or they'll be like, well, don't feel like that, or certain emotions are safe and certain emotions aren't. And then that also comes into whether or not they'll ask for help, right? Who they'll ask for help, when they'd reach out, what support system would they build. Shame is something that's really, really high, and stigma with mental illness. And I'm so glad that you guys are doing this as a way of trying to break through some of those myths out there about mental illness and mental health related issues, because we all need a system, right? We're so stressed out all the time and have all of these, societal pressures on how we're supposed to show up, and that piece around being productive, and that idea of, busyness as this badge of saying that we're doing really well and we're successful, when on the inside I see a lot of people who are crumbling, who feel like they don't even understand what they're feeling. They're using substances, or they're using something in their life, whether it's caffeine or drugs or sex, gambling, whatever it is, to take that pain away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so by being able to have that support system where someone can just be like, I get it, even if I don't get it, right? Is really important. I think one of the things too that I always will say to folks is that to really work on our language, right? Is that telling somebody you understand what they're going through, you can't understand what they're going through. You're not looking through their eyes. You haven't walked in their life. And it is okay to say, I don't know what to say. I want to help, and I'm not sure what to say to you right now. I see you're hurting. To be able to just be present and observe what you're noticing, versus, like you're saying, flipping into that problem solving. Hold that space to be able to just be with the person. Yeah,
I do agree. I think the best interactions I have are when I'm just there.
yeah,
And I've never had a single person in my life, because I'd like to say it's a two-way street. It's not always as much of a two-way street as I want, because I get so much from them, but I try to give. And I do find that, like, when people do come, what they're not expecting is for me to have answers for them. What they're expecting is to be able to bounce off of me. And sometimes just bouncing off of someone in a social way
Yep.
allows them to discover their own answers.
absolutely.
Right? Just getting it out of your system and then putting it back in and digesting it differently after it's been touched someone else, it seems like it allows sometimes for more clarity.
Absolutely, yeah. And sometimes we don't know what we're thinking until we say it, right? And then we say it, we're like, oh, right? Like, I didn't realize that was connected, or I didn't realize that was actually bothering me as much as it is. And absolutely agree with you 100%. Is how do we just allow ourselves to have that voice, right?
Yeah, and definitely, I think something that needs to be mentioned is the stigma, like you briefly touched on, and I want to make sure we go into a little deeper. The stigma behind asking for help in general, being okay with the fact that you need help from another individual, because we are programmed to be independent. We are programmed to take care of our own business. But that programming, the societal programming that we have, I think to the most part, is the detriment that is fueling a lot of the myth of people not having these conversations in general. And sometimes just a conversation, it can be extremely rewarding and educational. Just getting someone else's point of view on what you're experiencing, because that other person thinks differently than you, and might see a different part of the picture than you're capable of seeing from where you're standing.
Absolutely.
And so it blows my mind as an adult male that like asking for help is not more celebrated in society.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, and I think that's where those societal pieces come in around asking for help. Is I will hear people say it's a sign of weakness. We're supposed to be strong, right? Men and women, in these ways, but it really isolates us, right? Instead of looking at it as actually, it takes a lot of guts and it takes a lot of courage.
That's me.
Is that you? Yeah.
I
Say
very
more about
much
that.
struggle with the reaching out part. Feeling that shame, I guess it is. And also just feeling like I don't need the help. I can do this on my own. I can power through. All I got to do is just either try and block it out or bury it, whatever I got to do to just keep moving forward each day.
How's that impact you? Was it working for you?
I am a very lonesome person.
Yes.
I've always enjoyed my alone time, but that's always going to be to an extent. Then that's when I go and visit my parents and
get some
and the
support.
family. I've got a couple of young nieces now that have brought a lot of joy into our small family that we have, and so the visits have gotten more frequent now, and that's been very nice.
Good. Yeah.
Now, something on the other side of the coin, though, I'm an extremely assertive communicator, okay? So my experience actually is the struggle to support the people in my life that aren't. So when I know someone needs the help, but they're not asking for the help, how am I able to help them, right? And how can I approach it respectfully, respecting their boundaries, but trying to inspire them to open up enough to let me help them. So I'm really finding that like that's my current struggle, because when I want help, I just ask for help. It's great. I love it. I'm so spoiled. It's great.
It's amazing.
But not everyone in my circle is, because they're not necessarily always open to getting the help they need.
Yeah.
They're more open to giving it. But like I've got really close friends that they really would rather help than be helped.
That's right.
And it seems like there's a bigger problem there.
Yes.
In general.
Agreed.
With like how these people become this way in general, to the point where they would rather help someone else, but they would literally refuse the same type of help.
Yep.
Even though they'd be in a situation where they would need it.
Yeah, that's kind of me as well.
Yeah. So, I mean, in my experience, I mean, there's lots of reasons for that. One of the ones that I see often is when folks are kind of brought up or they have this people-pleasing part of themselves, right? And it can be, this is where we bring in the topic of codependence, or, you know, even the buzzword with Mel Robbins right now around let them theory. But it really speaks to that idea that we can't change anyone. We can't make somebody reach out for help if they're not ready or don't want to. All we can do is let them know that we're there, and that, you know, if they want our help or they need support, to just let us know. But it's at that point is like, when is my role here? How have I done enough, right? And there are lots of folks out there who see themselves as the helper or wanting to please other people. And I often find that they themselves don't feel like they deserve it, right? I can't ask for help. I don't deserve it. You know, it's okay for you to get help, but it's not okay for me, you know, for a variety of reasons, beliefs of self. And it's tricky. Therapy can be very helpful for people to start to look at, how do I look at my patterns of interacting with others and the things that keep me kind of walled off from getting help, from talking with other people, from having open conversations. And there can be so many reasons for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's definitely like just something that I think a lot of people are struggling with. Just the idea of being, I think someone that used the word vulnerable is the one I
huge.
liked. People, it's like you're not allowed to be vulnerable. And I could see maybe even where that came from in our history of evolution as humans, that being vulnerable probably wasn't something that was necessarily beneficial when we were hunter-gatherers. But, we're not necessarily in that survival mode in the same way anymore. But the conditioning is still very real.
Yes.
I definitely struggle with the feeling sort of undeserving of the help, feeling like I've got myself into this situation, so it's my responsibility to deal with it and accept the consequence of my action or inaction in a lot of cases.
Which makes it really lonely.
Lack of being proactive, and then I feel like I'm not productive. That gets me in a funk, and that makes me less productive, and it just sort of spirals that way.
Absolutely. And listen to all the self-criticism all the way.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
The shoulda, woulda, couldas, the things that I didn't do right, and so then I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it, I don't deserve it. It's my fault. I have to be the one to get myself out. And it's really hard to say I've made a mistake, or it's really hard to say I can't do this by myself. And our culture needs to get better at that, right? Because our culture very much promotes the idea that you need to be independent as, AF, and, that we need to be self-starters, and success means that you're independent and really working towards something, and you don't need other people. But the fact of the matter is that we do need other people. That's part of us being human. And I think that's for us to really look at ourselves first as human beings, and what's the nature? We need to feel connected to other people. That's really important for us to feel connected. And so many of us are living kind of in isolation.
I feel like we're social animals.
Yes.
In general,
Yeah.
yet we've now conditioned ourselves to turn away with the most beneficial form of socialization,
Yes.
which is healing collaboration. You know what I mean? And so yeah, I really do, like, as someone who just, I'm lucky, I'm programmed to want that whenever I'm sick, whenever I'm ill, whenever I'm upset. I find like the flip side of that is when you are asking for help and you are getting support, you're getting things like validation. You're
Yes.
getting things like reassurance. You're getting, those things that you're not doing when you're shut off. Because you're not validating yourself. You're self-criticizing. Opening up and being vulnerable does allow you to resolve some of those internal struggles.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we could go down the rabbit hole of, how do we get here? How different family styles, different backgrounds, and in my experience, that's the piece around how are we conditioned, right? So, you're an assertive communicator, and that's been okay because when you put it out there, it's been validated and encouraged, right? Whereas for lots of people that I work with, it could be that they put it out there, maybe even when they were little kids, I need help, or they've cried when they were sad, or when they were angry, they allowed themselves to be angry, and it was told that that's not allowed, or they were abused because of it, or something like that. So very quickly we're conditioned to say, I can't have those things, I can't ask you for help because it's not safe, right? And so we could go down that around attachment wounds and things like that make it really hard for us to say, hey, I hear what you're saying, and could you tell me more, because I'm struggling with it too, right? Yeah.
I'd love to know more about just almost like how we got to this place as a society, how, like, because this is a societal conditioning, parents conditioning their kids in a specific way because that's what society is expecting their kids to behave like, and the negative effects of that parenting without properly understanding it yourself, and also explaining it to who you're conditioning for, because a lot of that exists for a reason. But I feel like a lot of people, when they're passing that conditioning on, they don't even really fully understand the reasoning behind it themselves, let alone being able to explain that to the person that they're teaching that.
Exactly. Right? Like women are, if we're looking at gender stereotyping, that toxic masculinity piece of it around, be strong, suck it up, be the man, all of those things that I hear a lot from people, which really doesn't allow us to just be human. And then for women as well, we're taught to, oh, you're such a crybaby, or you're too sensitive, or you're too much, or you're too dramatic, or it's just about how can we just allow ourselves to be, right? And that some people are going to be feel more able and more open to asking for help than others. And so how do we meet the need? Or when does our job end? Where does the responsibility of the other person begin around, when you need help, you need to ask for it, because not everyone feels like they can do that. So it's tricky, right?
Yeah, definitely.
And it's even trickier when you're dealing with youth.
Yes.
Getting bullied, dealing with their peers, all of that, fresh into high school, those years, I remember. Very,
not fun.
Very, somewhat fondly and somewhat not so fondly. And again, it's one of those things where I was going through it, but I just assumed that everybody was going through it.
Yeah.
So I didn't see it as abnormal. I'm like, oh, this is just the way it is. And I just sort of learned to deal with it. And whether that's letting stuff roll off your back or seeking therapy or just talking it out, whatever's going to work.
Well, and it makes me wonder too, like, again, through high school, I have the support system, I got these friends, I got family, they all listen to me, they all validate me, allowing me to become a confident, assertive communicator.
Yes.
And it's the reason is support from other people. So like, even an extrovert, what type of journey would they be on if they didn't already have the support, people supporting me to teach me how to support others? I'm just lucky that I was conditioned that way. Whereas again, that's not something that everybody's getting. So you're going through life, no one's teaching you how to properly support other people, no one's teaching you how to ask for support. And then you have to go through something like high school.
Yes.
Where the world is not helping you in any way, shape, or form, and you need to learn how to speak up for yourself, or you're going to carry all of those bad habits into adulthood, right?
Yeah. It's the speaking up, or, it's the shutting down, or it's the staying quiet and going underground, right? Like, and like you're saying, we don't know what we don't know. So if we're living through something and we think this is the same for everybody, well, how would you know that it wasn't until you had a different experience, right? And it's tricky. And I think those pieces around how do we look at what are the questions we can ask? So things that I'll say to folks is, don't assume that the other person is going to be helped in the way that you would want to be helped. But we do that, right? We will say, oh, let's talk about it in this way, or I'll suggest, why don't you try this, or how can we do that? But we're really putting it out there as to how we would want someone to help us, but it may not meet the needs of the other person. So it's complicated, right? Which then makes it like, why are we bothering, right? It's hard, yeah.
It's definitely difficult. I find, like, just again, allowing yourself to be vulnerable, allowing yourself to trust enough to, say something that you're not sure will even be accepted.
Yes.
And that's the conditioning too, where it's like people are scared to even just say, hey, I need this and this and this, because they don't know how the person is going to, perceive what they're saying.
Exactly.
They're thinking, oh, this person doesn't have time to listen to my stuff. This person doesn't have this. And those are logical fears because of this whole problem of our societal conditioning towards not understanding how to both accept and give support.
Yeah. So when both of you think about moments where you felt supported by somebody else, what's happened? What's communicated to you that they want to support you?
I think the biggest thing is, for me, validation. So like when I'm reaching out for support, I'm really reaching out. One of the main things is to be validated in some way, shape, or form. Not just heard, but I understand what you're saying, and you have a right to feel the way you're feeling. You know what I mean? Even if they wouldn't have done it themselves the same way, it's a way of going, you're not wrong. You know what I mean? Which gives me a chance to then process the information and learn from it, both in a positive and negative way. Like, learn what I did wrong and what I did right. So that validation is really key for me, processing stress and processing situations. So I'm very verbal with my closest kin on most of everything I'm going through, to have that ability to bounce it off. It's almost like a lot of them act as a mirror. It's the mirror telling me, yes, I've heard what you said, and yes, you're valid in your feelings on this topic.
Yeah, and validation doesn't necessarily mean that you agree with them, right? I think that's the big difference. People think if I say, yeah, I hear what you're saying, then that means I agree with them. You don't have to agree with somebody, but people feel how they feel, and it's really not up for someone else to judge that. This is how you feel. I hear you saying that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and validating emotions doesn't always necessarily validate whatever started the emotion or prompted
right.
the emotion, or whatever you did that made you feel that way, or whatever happened to you that made you feel that way. It's validating the emotion you're currently feeling.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's not saying that, oh, you deserve to feel this way because X, Y, and Z happened. It's like, no, I understand X, Y, and Z happened, and I understand that it's making you feel that way, and those feelings they're valid.
Yeah, and then what you do with them at that point becomes, good or bad, how you handle the reactions to that. But the validation, I think, is the most important part of supporting, specifically for me, because if I'm not able to validate my feelings, I don't really know what the next step is,
Absolutely.
because I need to process how I felt to then influence how I want to, pursue or move on or continue to invest in the situation itself.
And for me, to answer your question, my main support system is my parents. I've always been sort of a close friend group type of guy. And so I do have my close friends who I have no doubt would drop what they're doing to come help me. But I struggle to reach out to them more so than my parents. They're kind of the only ones that I confide in a lot. And they would probably tell you that I don't do it very often. But for me, it's less the validation, more so just them being there, telling me that they're gonna be there. And no matter what happens, they're gonna have my back. And
Totally.
just knowing that I have that sort of rock to rest on.
Yeah, they're reliable, right? And they're not going anywhere. That unconditional kind of doesn't matter.
I guess I feel like I don't want to put too much on my friends to put them in that position where they don't know what to say and don't know how to help.
Well, on the flip side of that, though, I have experiences though where, because I'm so open, having friends that can't necessarily handle that relationship either because of their own, abilities to be vulnerable. So they can't handle how vulnerable I am towards them because it's too overwhelming. And like overwhelming is the word that's been used towards me before. Like, I can't be this close with you because you are overwhelming, because you're so open and honest all the time, and not just some of the times, all the time, right? So reaching out is not something I have a problem with, but it is, how do you respect the boundaries of the people you're reaching out to and understand them, because you have to kind of see it from both sides of the picture.
Yep.
And I've been there too, where someone is reaching out to me and I definitely can't help them, and I am somewhat overwhelmed with what they need. But I find the way I approach that is like, please keep talking to me. This is what I can do for you. These are my suggestions on how you can get validation and help for the things I can't do for you. And so I'm trying my best to understand like that side of the coin as well, mostly because of my experiences overwhelming people with my own, validation needs and emotional validation needs themselves, just because they definitely those same people that wouldn't open up, you know what I mean? So they even struggle with supporting and being supported, versus some people that only struggle with being supported, or some people that only struggle with supporting. Like, I feel like it is a mixed bag, and there's, everyone, not everyone, but there's a lower population that don't struggle with that at all than there is that struggle with one of the aspects of it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, for sure. It's tricky, right?
Yeah. And have you ever had any of your experiences or anything that would be relevant to helping other people?
Absolutely. I think, growing up, I'm somebody who, you would consider to be a highly sensitive person. And so I'm a pretty deep feeler. Probably why I do what I do for a living. I love what I do. But it's something where, you really have to know who your people are. And, it's one of those things around, who do you let in and who don't you let in, right? And it's tricky because when I talk with clients about it, it comes down to that idea of, do I feel safe with this person? Do I feel unsafe? And really, it's about establishing, some sense of safety. And there's lots of people who don't feel safe with anybody, which is really hard for them. But having grown up, and having high school and experiences like that too, where there's times in high school where you feel really alone, or there's times where you feel misunderstood or not seen, that's really tough. And to be able to find people that want to see you for who you are, and you don't have to be anybody else, that took a long time for me in my life, to be able to have that sense of, these are my people, right? My partner now, who's an amazing person, is probably the person who's seen me the most real out of anybody in my life, right? And I think it's one of those things where I trust my instincts around that, as to who I might say, okay, well, can I share a little more with you? And I will talk with other people around, if someone is coming up to them and saying things like, can I need to talk to someone, is really asking the question, do you have capacity right now? Do you have capacity to hear what I have to say? And so it's that opportunity for the other person to say, my mind's really full right now. Can you give me an hour, and then you'll have my undivided attention, right? Other times is asking, do you want me to listen, or do you want advice? And so then it's clear for the person who's hearing as to what the need is of the other person, because then it gives us a chance to take breath and sit back and be able to just be the listener, if that's what we need to be.
Understand our expectations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm so caught on the topic of the people that are unable to support others, or are even receive support themselves. I'm finding really are the people that are the most closed off to mental health support in general. I'm never going to a therapist. I would never need a therapist. And I will say it, a lot of people in my life are getting sick of hearing it, but I am always like, everyone needs therapy. Every human being on the planet, and I will say this in many more episodes going forward, every single person on the planet could benefit from therapy. Okay, just in the same way everyone on the planet can benefit from a family doctor. Okay, your mental health is your health, right? And this whole topic, the common denominator between this topic and probably most of the topics we'll be talking about on the show, is, are you treating your mental health the same way you would treat your physical health? No, because the entire society we have built is that mental health is not health.
Yeah.
And that's really like the driving force between people not respecting asking for help, and not respecting needing help.
Yeah, it's like I'll say to clients, if you had a cast on your arm or your leg, people would be holding doors for you, they'd be helping you with things, they'd be doing different things because it's visible. And when we're talking about mental health related issues, or if someone's in chronic depression, or has debilitating anxiety, or lots of other mental health issues that are out there, it's not something that people see, right? And we feel like we have to put on this front so that people don't see that part of us, because it's considered vulnerable. But having a broken arm or a broken leg is also a vulnerability, but it's more widely accepted. So I love that you guys are doing this. I know I've said that already, but I think it's great.
And I do wonder, like, along our evolutionary chain, where in society, where in history we decided mental health wasn't health. Because animals treat their mental health like health. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, there was probably a point where those things were the same thing, and both extremely necessary for survival, and taking care of them was both necessary for survival, and where along the way that we dropped the mental health being necessary for survival, because it really is. You have to be able to function up here to survive, right? Animals understand that to the point where they have, ways of dealing with what is happening when, an animal can't survive because of its mental stability. They're not always ways I approve of, eating them. But like I said, like they're aware that that's just as important as, again, a broken leg. So it really does almost confound me of like where along the way some of that dropped, and how we've gotten from being animals to being slightly maybe in denial of the importance of mental health. Yeah.
Yeah, when a lot of this cuts kind of to the core of why we started this whole journey in the first place was that beyond a support system, there are a plethora of external resources out there that a lot of people don't know about, and we want to bring awareness to that, as well as having discussions like this.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, we've gone very over time. So, but that's no problem. That's the whole point of the show, is to keep the conversation going. I just wanted to ask you, Wendy, if there's anything else you wanted to mention about supporting others, or any, specific experiences you wanted to make sure that we talked about today.
I guess maybe the piece would be, if you're concerned about somebody that's in your life, and you're concerned about their well-being, you're noticing that they're not themselves, or ask the question, right? We often will say, oh, well, if I don't want to upset them, right? I don't want to upset them, so I'm not going to ask the question. But people who, when you ask the question, hey, you don't seem like yourself lately, I'm concerned about you, it actually makes someone feel seen. And even if that's all that they have capacity for in that moment, and they're not wanting to talk about it further, I mean, what a beautiful thing to be able to say to someone, I see you. And, I'm here for you when you're ready. And if you need somebody, I am here. It's something that seems so simple, but we make it so complicated.
Yeah, and for those who are like me, who bottle things up, having someone prompt you like that is huge.
Yeah, I think
It can change everything.
I have a partner too that, like, sometimes I'll say, hey, I'm worried about you because of this and this, and he won't even realize there was a problem until I brought it up, and then he's like, starts thinking about it and realizing, oh, whoa, there is a problem I haven't even remotely acknowledged, let alone addressed this. And allowing him to then process it, and me going like, I'll be here to help you process. But I do feel like, even just as social animals, sometimes we need to keep each other as checks and balances. And again, society has programmed us to not do that. Don't check this
Yeah.
person. Don't balance this person.
Yeah,
That's
don't
not
ask.
your business. It's
Yeah.
not your right. But it is your right to ask. You're allowed to ask. And I think that's the biggest thing about breaking down the stigma. You're allowed to ask.
Yeah.
And you're allowed to accept. Just as much as you're allowed to say no. But we all are already programmed on how to say no.
Yep.
You know what I mean? We don't need to worry about reprogramming how to decline help from other people. I think we really need to be worrying about how to accept.
I feel like we're all conditioned to say the word fine.
Yeah.
We're fine. How are you? I'm good. I'm all right.
It's a good example.
Fine.
When we went and accepted some certificates of acknowledgement from the city this year.
Beautiful.
And we were up in City Hall, me and Rob and another one of our staff members, and the counselor said, do you guys want a snack? Do you guys want a drink? And all three of us, before she said another word, said, no thank you, we're fine, without even thinking. And she stopped us and said, do you realize that all three of you just said no without me even telling you what could be actually being offered? Because we were just programmed to not accept help and show that vulnerability. So she pulled us into the little kitchen. She said, these are your tax dollars at work. Help yourself to something in the fridge. And I grabbed an iced tea, and as soon as I went, okay, fine, I'll have an iced tea, then Rob grabbed something, and our friend Candace grabbed something. And she was like, don't be afraid to accept my help, because that's what I do. That's why I'm here. And I think that was a lesson in me, where I'm an assertive communicator and I still will reject help.
Even just a gesture, like offering someone a drink,
Especially if it's not prompted. Like, if I'm not looking for help, when someone offers help, I'm still immediately programmed to say no, even though maybe I probably could use that help, but I haven't realized that yet.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a matter of, like, maybe properly processing when someone offers you help. Do I actually want this? Do I need it, or do I want it, and is it okay to accept it? Those thoughts don't even go through my head when someone prompts me on when I don't see it coming. So even assertive communicator, immediately programmed to decline help unless it's help I'm the one asking for. Like, that's that's wild.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as a takeaway from today, if I was standing in front of a group of people, I might say to them, take this to heart, take this with you out into your world. Think about people who are in your life right now, people you care about, people you've wanted to ask the question, hey, are you okay? People are going to say, I'm fine. They'll put on that mask. But if we are able to say, I've noticed that you're more withdrawn, right? Or I've noticed that, you've been more frustrated recently, to look at what are the observations that I see. And it's okay if you don't want to talk about it, but I want you to know I'm here. Like, if everybody that heard this went out and said, I'm going to try that with one person, and gave it a shot and started to kind of create this, I don't know if revolution's a strong word, but this way of how do we start to build capacity to say, hey, I see you. Hey, I may not have all the answers, but I'm here. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I want to hear what's happening for you. I really want to hear, not just this, hi, how are you? Like, it's this passing, like how many people will say that and say, hey, how's it going? Right? And they don't actually care to know the answer. It's become part of a greeting. But that actually stop and say, I really want to know.
And the capacity to allow that to happen as well. Like, because again, I'll go out, I have no problem doing that for other people. I'll offer help. I'll always be like, as soon as I see a difference, oh my God, are you okay? Blah, blah, blah. I'm super attentive that way. But again, as soon as the tables are turned on me, I struggle to realize that I need to also, be okay with people watching and noticing the changes in my vibe and my mood. You know what I mean? Yeah.
And along with noticing negative changes in behavior and reaching out, also reach out when you see someone doing something positive and say, hey, I notice you're a lot more cheerful and or whatever it is. I notice you're starting a new venture and that's really exciting. Give them that little bit of a positive boost.
Yeah.
Because even if they are doing something that's new and exciting, they might not feel that excitement about it just yet. They might be feeling really anxious about it and still unsure about going through with it or not. So if you see a little bit of a glimmer in someone's eye, notice that too and be like, hey, that's awesome.
Well, that's still a form of emotional validation, right? So that's a way to maybe even allow people to be more comfortable with accepting emotional validation from external sources.
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow. Okay. This has been a treat. All of our cameras are going to die. So I'm going to wrap this up while I have a chance to get this outro out. I just, first of all, want to thank Wendy so much for joining us. This has been a wonderful conversation about supporting others. I want to thank Rob again for being my co-host. Thank you everybody so much for watching this episode. There's a lot more to come, so make sure you stay tuned. And again, don't forget to love yourself.